All right, here's a review topic. This is an optional video, but hopefully it's helpful. Simplifying expressions and order operations. So expressions are a collection of numbers, symbols, and operations. So there's no equal sign. You don't have two things, one on one side, one on the other side, set together with an equal sign. You just have a collection of stuff, and it has a certain value or meaning, and you're trying to rewrite it in a nicer, easier way. So we're not solving these expressions. We are simplifying them and writing them in a better way. And so that we all agree on what the reduced simplified version is, we all have to agree to follow those steps in the same way. So we've come up with this idea, Pemdas, which you might have heard of. It's called the order of operations. And you'll notice how I color coded it. It's often called Pemdas, but multiplication and division are actually equal to each other. It's not multiplication first and division second. They're kind of on the same step. Likewise with adding and subtracting. You're not doing only adding first and then all the subtracting. Adding and subtracting happen kind of together simultaneously, because adding and subtracting are actually two sides of the same coin. Adding a negative is the same as subtracting. So here's an easy example just using integers. Not easy, but an example using integers to help you see what we're doing. So when you start with something big and complex like this, like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of stuff in there. So let's start with parentheses. Anywhere you see parentheses, just figure out what its value is. So look here, 6 minus 8, that's -2. But go ahead and keep the parentheses around the -2, and then fill everything else in that you see. That asterisk there just means multiplication. Okay, now look for exponents. We don't have anything with exponents. We move on to multiplication and division. I have multiplication right here. These are connected. So anytime you have a number next to parentheses, that means multiplication. So what is this? It's 3 minus, and now 4 times -2 is -8. So remember that when you subtract a negative, it becomes positive. Alternatively, you could think of this as a -4 times a -8. Sorry, a -4 times a -2, which ends up becoming +8. Either way, you end up with 3 plus 8, and then plus, right here, I get 5 times 2 is 10, minus 3. Then finally, I move on to adding and subtracting. And here we do adding and subtracting, usually left to right, although frankly, you can do them in any order you want, as long as you associate the negative sign with a corresponding number. So I could do 3 plus 8 is 11, and then 11 plus 10 minus 3. 11 plus 10 is 21, minus 3 is 18. But I just want to kind of highlight alternate options here. As long as you associate the negative sign with the 3, I could do 10 minus 3 first and get 7, and then do 11 plus 7, which is also 18. So the key there with multiplication and division, or with adding and subtracting, is that you can do those pieces in any order you want, multiplication and division together in any order, and then separately addition and subtraction together in any order, as long as you associate the numbers with their sign or with being in the numerator or denominator. All right, let's take a second example. This one has variables in it, so that might make it look harder, that might make it look easier. When you look at your parentheses, there's nothing inside the parentheses that can be combined together because you can't combine a variable with a number, but we could distribute or multiply the 4 in. So very often when you have variables, when you're looking at parentheses, what you want to do is distribute. So here we're going to have 4x is 4 times x plus 4 times 5 is 20. Then we're distributing here a -5. Be extra careful that the minus sign goes with the 5 as it gets distributed, because we are subtracting whatever we got. So you can either think of it as subtract 5 times 2, which is subtract 10 with x, or as -5 times 2, which is subtracting or -10x. Then when you distribute over here, we're subtracting a negative, so that becomes adding 15 plus x minus 6. Now we want to see if there's any like terms that can be combined. And remember, you can only combine things with the same variable and the same power. So these are all x's. So 4x minus 10x and plus 1x. So again, I'm adding and subtracting in any order I want. So I'm going to take the 4 and the 1 and add them together and get 5, and then do 5 minus 10 to get -5x. Then I'm just switch color here. I'm going to have my plus 20, my plus 15, and my -6. So I'm going to do 15 minus 6 is 9, and then 20 plus 9 is 29. So there we have it. To be clear, you could do this in order left to right, like 20 plus 15 is 35, 35 minus 6 is 29. But sometimes if you see groupings of numbers that like work together nicely, you can just group them together and then use the nicer, easier numbers to combine everything at the end. So in summary, when you're simplifying an expression, you're following the order of operations. You're being very mindful about multiplication and division happening together, addition and subtraction happening together. You're being very detailed and thorough. And I would also say extra recommendation is try to work vertically downward below what you're doing, because that way you can see where it came from. I can see this went to here, this went to here, this stuff together went to here. It really makes it easier for you to check your own work and for someone else to follow along with what you were doing. So that's it. In the next video, we'll just apply more and more of this to other kinds of things like fractions, decimals, percents, etc. But for now, you're all set. Thanks.